What's up, Mets fans? It's your boy CP, joined by my co-host Rob for another Mets post-game show. We are talking about this afternoon's Mets versus Marlins action, going over a little bit of a recap, what we saw from both the offense and the pitching, talking about some updated Mets notes from spring training. What was absolutely abysmal was that this game was actually not televised anywhere that I could find it. So we are going off of what we saw from video clips and the box score. I don't know if that's a Marlins issue or an MLB issue, but that needs to be fixed. Rob, what's up?
Yeah, man, it's annoying. You have to follow game day, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But when you want to watch a little bit of baseball in the afternoon, you get, you know, Cleveland Guardians games, and you're like, all right, let's go. So, but unfortunately, we had to use game day to actually find out what the hell was going on, and there was some important people that we wanted to watch today, in the lineup, and of course on the mound.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, today we'll talk about it was Paul Blackburn's first start of spring training. He looked pretty good. We'll assess that situation, where he fits into this rotation moving forward. Before we fully get into today's post game, whether you are a returning subscriber, a longtime subscriber, or a new viewer of either of our channels, make sure to smash those thumbs up buttons on both channels, myself, the True Mets Talk channel, and also Talkin Mets with Rob over on YouTube. This is being streamed and will be streamed all 2025 long, spring training and the regular season. And hopefully we have some playoff baseball streams for the New York Mets this season as well. So to continue to subscribe and smashing those thumbs up buttons. And as always, please do not be shy. Again, we love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this team, whether it's what you saw in spring training. Let us know in the live chat. We'll pop up some comments. We'll discuss this as a collective Mets fan base, because at the end of the day, just because we're up here on screen, we are two Mets fans as well that love talking about this team. Know what you all have to say about this team as well. Salute to Ethan, Cindy, Darren, as always. Nelson, appreciate you all being in the chat. Nicholas as well, and Rock. I appreciate you all, and we appreciate you all. Okay, Rob, let's talk about this game real quick, right? Um, Mets versus Marlins. Marlins beat the Mets 4-1, but we're clearly not, we don't care about the score. This is spring training at the end of the day. It seems like some spring training L's have been stockpiling, but again, it's about the process. And then trying to get into that time frame of looking for the results as well. But for right now, before the calendar hits March, we're looking at the process. This was, again, a game that I really was looking forward to seeing, because you see the top five in this lineup, and even Luis Torrens, who's going to be making this roster as the backup catcher. That top four could potentially be your top four come opening day, as we've been discussing this whole entire time, with Lindor all the way down to Vientos. And clearly we'll see where Jeff McNeil fits into this lineup. But, Francisco Lindor takes the offer. Juan Soto actually challenged the baseball today, and he was successful. Go figure. He has an immense knowledge of the strike zone. And Pete Alonso. This is now back-to-back games for Pete Alonso, getting in the RBI category, also taking a walk, so the plate discipline is there, but going the opposite field, which is exactly what we've been stressing for Pete Alonso for how long now? Probably about a year and a half. So
Mm-hmm.
take me through the box score, what you see and what you're looking forward to with the guys that got the start today.
Yeah, you have to put a focus on Pete Alonso because since not just us, it's been Met fans all through the chat for a year and a half, and just in general of we everybody's seen him pull off on balls a lot more. Him taking those balls the other way now, it's clearly a new. I'm not gonna say a new approach, but it's clearly an approach he's taken to the plate now, where he knows, okay, I'm taking that outside pitch and I'm driving it to right center or right field. That's where Pete Alonso is at his best. And to see him do that, back to back games is huge. And this is where that 230, 240 average can jump to 260, 265, even 270 maybe with the 40 bombs and 100 plus RBIs. Guess what? That is exactly the Pete Alonso that we've been dying for a couple of years now. And that's what this team needs, because we need to score a lot of runs, especially with the rotation, with the question marks and the injuries that we currently have. Um, Also, you talked about Juan Soto winning the challenge as well. We know his eye is really good. Jeff McNeil actually showed a pulse today, which is nice. Again, you're right about the lineup, right? 1 through 4, again, whatever combination me, you, and everybody else might want in the top of the order or in the top four, that's probably going to be the top four guys, unless guys get days off or stuff like that. But it's definitely going to be fun looking at that. And again, it's a potent 1 through 4, and you haven't even added Nimmo in there yet, which is always a plus. I don't know where Jeff McNeil is going to be, to be quite honest with you. We do believe that he's going to be this opening day starter. It would be nice if he actually starts hitting, and we don't feel so terrible about him being an opening day starter at second base, especially with the competition between Beatty and Acuna. That's probably going to be going down for sure. But good sign from Alonso. McNeil showed a pulse, and the 1 through 4 that you see on your screen right now is probably what we're going to see on opening day. And I'm okay with that. I think that's exactly what it should be.
Yeah, 100%. And again, like some of these guys are still getting the feel for their timing of it all. I talked about it as it pertains to Francisco Alvarez on the post game that I did yesterday, because I know that you weren't able to join me, but it just seems like Francisco Alvarez has been out of, whack when it comes to his new mechanics and the timing of pitches, which has resulted in some strikeouts and some weak contact early on in spring training. But again, when we're talking about February 26th or February 25th, yesterday when I did the post game, it's too early to tell in terms of exactly how these hitters are going to progress for the rest of spring. Now, I think that Alvarez is such a key, and we see Luis Torrens got the start today. It's nice to see him have a couple of base hits early on in spring training as well. But Francisco Alvarez is the main guy that I'm watching because mechanically, you know, there's nothing that we can say. And I know that Mets fans and fans of this game in general love to point to mechanics, whether it's pitching or offense. But with Alvarez changing his mechanics and spending all offseason long trying to familiarize himself with these new mechanics, we can probably pump the brakes on anything being wrong with him mechanically because he just changed that, right, to his comfortability. And it's more so a timing issue. So, what I've been saying on all these streams and all these post games, right, is that we're wanting to see the timing of it all come together. And we'll talk about Francisco Alvarez here in just a second as it pertains to, some on-field BP that he took against a certain pitcher in some of the Mets updates that we'll be getting into. But yeah, I was very curious to ask you where you thought Jeff McNeil fit into this lineup in terms of, the batting order, etc. It's nice to see him again, like you said, showing a pulse, pulling a baseball down the line, I believe it was, at least to right field for a double, which is good. I think that was his first hit of spring training. I was waiting to see if his bat was going to come alive here in this game.
Yeah.
But where do you see him fitting in? We know that we can assume, I should say, we don't know for sure, but we can assume he's going to be the open day starter. He's going to get this last crack at solidifying himself up the middle with Lindor and in this batting order. So when opening day comes around, where do you see him hitting in this order, given the personnel that we're talking about 1 through 4 and not even seeing Brandon Nimmo yet? Do you think he's a 6 hitter, 7 hitter, or maybe even further down in the 8 hole?
I'd rather see him in the bottom third of the order, but what Mendoza has done, I think it's 3 times now out of 5 games that McNeil played in, he batted fifth. So again, that's because Nimmo hasn't played yet. So I don't, or Marte. So I don't think that's going to be where McNeil is going to be right now. I think it's just putting them in the middle of the order just to probably get him more at bats at the moment, just to see where he's at. But I'd rather see him 7 through 9. I think again, it depends on who's playing, right? I think if there's a lefty on the mound, you might see him lower in the order. You want to probably get the righties a little bit up in the order a little bit more, so he might be at the bottom of the order, batting 8th. It depends, like if Winker's playing, if Winker's in the game, if you don't have too many lefties in a row, you want to split up the lefties. He might bat 7th one day, 8th one day. But if he's hitting, I think Mendoza likes the fact that McNeil can put the bat on the ball, and Mendoza has no problem going with the veteran and going with, have a little bit of trust with Jeff McNeil. I think he would do that because I think if Jeff McNeil figures out what the hell is going on and he starts to do it, I think you're going to see him jump up to 6th in the order. but it also depends on what the other guys are doing. But if right now, I'd rather see him seventh or eighth because I said it before. I think Jose Siri is going to be the starting center fielder, and he should be batting ninth with the immense power that he shows at times and the speed. I think he's like a second leadoff hitter, so I do like that. So I would think probably as of right now, I would say eighth. To be quite honest, eighth would probably be fitting in right now, but not where he is right now. That kind of worries me. But again, until McNeil and I'm sorry, Nimmo and Marte actually get in the lineup, then you'll have a better feel of where McNeil is going to back going forward. But right now, I don't want to see him anywhere near, behind Mark Vientos. It probably hurts Mark Vientos a little bit if that would be the case, if he's not hitting.
Was it last season or the season before that Jeff McNeil opened up as the cleanup hitter? I think it was last season.
And you know what? There was so many changes last year to the lineup. I don't even remember, but it probably was 2023 to be quite honest, because he had a decent 2022.
Yeah, that's true. Hold on, I'm trying to look at this Mets. Not that it matters, but I'm just so curious because when I saw that come out, I was like, "Hold on, what are we doing here?" Anyways, it doesn't really matter. That kind of just got me sidetracked here. But listen, I agree with you, and it all depends on the Marte Winker situation. If Mendoza wants to go left, right, he has the ability to do so, or he can just double stack lefties if he wants to do that as well to create a disadvantage if another team has that elite lefty bullpen arm, later on in the innings and just hope that it aligns when they want to put them in the ball game when the lefties are coming up. That makes sense too. But I would have to imagine, again, with Brandon Nimmo potentially being that lefty bat, then you can go ahead and put a Starling Marte in that 6 hole, and then Jeff McNeil probably thereafter is going to be your 7 hole hitter. But things change if you have 2 lefties ahead of Jeff McNeil with Brandon Nimmo and Jesse Winker, and then he'd probably get extended down to that 8 spot like you just mentioned. So that was a perfect analysis right there. Did you watch yesterday's game, by the way, between the Mets and the Astros?
I watched very little of it.
So Jose Siri actually drew a walk, which surprised me to it was like it was an applause moment, honestly, because I'm like, I have not seen that, on the rare occasion when I've watched Jose Siri at bats before, and you look at his Savant page, the walk rate is down. And we had this discussion in the post game a couple days ago. If the Mets hitting lab or whoever's job this falls under to make him a little bit more selective at the plate, if he can increase that walk rate to be respectable, and if he can increase the on base percentage to be respectable, you're talking about, again, with his power and that on base combination, if he can reach that potential, that's a perfect 9 hole hitter, like you said, as well, with the speed and everything else that he provides to
Mhm.
flip the lineup over. And that's the same reason why we're talking about Luis Angel Acuna. If he makes the roster or when he comes up onto this roster in 2025, would serve as the same type of ball player, the ability to get on base and the speed, just like he showed with getting a base hit and advancing to second base on a stolen base and getting into scoring position for Jesse Winker yesterday as well. So that's the lineup here. Again, it's unfortunate that we're talking about this game because there was no broadcast. There was no way for us to watch it, especially on the MLB app. And again, I don't know if that's the Marlins, fault or if that's just an MLB thing in general. But when Juan Soto was playing and when the New York Mets lineup is as good as it is with these top 4, maybe even 5 guys right here, you need to be able to broadcast the game. So that's a big issue that I had from today. Getting into some of the chat here. Again, we appreciate you all taking your time in this early or late afternoon, early evening time on this beautiful Wednesday, February 26th. Make sure you smash the subscribe and thumbs up buttons. Steven is saying, how is Pete doing this spring training? I have watching and been able to keep up with the spring training games. That's why we are here to talk about this team, Steven. So hopefully we are filling you in as best as we can. That's the whole goal here. Rock following up saying Pete has been hitting well, RBIs in back-to-back games as well, 100%. I like everything that I'm seeing from Pete Alonso. And if this approach continues, and I'm not saying that he has to completely go opposite field and shift his approach, right? Because again, we can get into this conversation and in this debate what's most efficient in terms of pull side hitting with the home run aspect for Pete Alonso. But when he is at his best in
Yeah.
recent years, there's few guys that can consistently put the ball over the fence to the opposite field, right? In the right center field gap. Mark Vientos is one of them. Juan Soto is one of them with his first spring training home run, and Pete Alonso is the other guy as well, let alone Freddie Freeman and everybody else around the league that can do it, right? That's has immense talent. But Pete Alonso, whether he's hitting third or fourth in this lineup, he's going to be getting crazy RBI opportunities.
Yep.
By the nature of how this lineup is going to be set up with Lindor and Juan Soto batting 1-2, if you put Mark Vientos in the 3 spot before Pete Alonso and just kind of flip what you see on your graphic, that's another potential guy to get on base at a high clip. So Pete Alonso is going to be getting his opportunities. And this is why he chose to come back to the New York Mets, Rob. He
Yep.
knew that he wasn't stupid or naive when he made this decision between the Blue Jays and the Mets. This is exactly why he chose to come back to this team anyways. And so I think that's what I think a lot of people need to understand is that is not by mistake on why he's a New York Met right now in this walk year 2.0 with that option. People are going to be getting on base ahead of Pete Alonso. And I can't wait because we're going to see if he made adjustments from the 2024 regular season campaign.
Yeah, Pete Alonso can hit home runs in his sleep. That was never the concern. The concern was what does he do when he doesn't hit a home run, right? The big problem was just going back to last year. I don't care about 2023 or what he did in 2019 or 2021. It doesn't matter. What he did last year, when he didn't hit a home run, he was basically a below average player with people on base. We know he had a lot of opportunities last year. We talked about it. And if he didn't hit a home run, he wasn't driving in those runs. The difference needs to be this year is that when he doesn't hit the home run, what does he do with the men on base? We all assume that with Juan Soto, at least right now, with Juan Soto and Lindor, probably going to be on base a lot for him. And let's say he does back clean up a game or two, who knows if he will be back cleanup. But if he does, you got 3 guys that have potentially chances to be on base for him. That's what he needs to do is what we've seen so far in spring, right? He doesn't need to look for home runs because when you're a power hitter, it naturally comes, right? When there's a ball that's, right in your sweet spot, middle in, you're gonna just naturally pull it and the power is gonna take over, right? It's just a matter of what you're gonna do with that outside pitch that he seems to get a lot from a lot of pitchers. And as you know, when it comes to baseball, when they see they can get you out, like pitchers are not going to change and throw more inside right now when they knew last year. The book on him last year was throw something on the outside corner or a little off the plate, and he's going to go fishing. He's going to pull off of everything. They're going to do that again this year. That's exactly what they're going to do. It takes a year for them to look at the book and flip it on you. And then you got to adjust to that. This is the same thing with every batter that had a bad year. Right? In the pitcher that has a bad, you got to flip the script right away to change it up. And with Pete Alonso, everybody's going to throw that slider on the outside corner or right outside the outside corner, or even with fastballs. They're going to say, you got to beat us with those pitches on the outside corner because that was his kryptonite last year. He could not do anything until Milwaukee, it felt like, that he couldn't hit that outside pitch, even no matter what it was, change up, fastball, slider, it didn't matter. He either looked the fastball right down the middle or, looking awful swinging at a pitch on the outside corner or a little bit out on his own. And that was his kryptonite. That was his bugaboo. And that was the biggest problem. Again, jumping his average from what it was in 240 last year to 260, right? I know people don't care about average, but that puts the bat on the ball more. How many more RBIs he would have had if he just got, flicked the ball the right field with runners on base and have a 260 average last year? He would have easily had 100 RBIs. That's the difference between, 10 to 15 less RBIs to 10 to 15 more RBIs. That's where Pete Alonso is at his best. Because when he hits the 120 RBIs, you knew what he did with that. It wasn't just the 40 plus home runs. It was what he did when he didn't hit the home runs. Right now, the approach clearly in spring training is to go the other way. When you have natural power, you don't need to think about power. What you got to do is have an approach to go the opposite field when it calls for it, when the pitches are there. And again, if the approach that he's going right now to go the other way, he knows what the pitchers are trying to do to him. that's where mentally he needs to be right now. And I think that's where hopefully he stays, and the power is just going to come natural. When the pitch that he sees and his eyes light up, when the sweet spot of that ball is right where he needs it to be, he's going to drive the ball no matter what.
No, 100%. I mean, the way that he's going to get paid for a long-term deal, we're talking about Pete Alonso here, is that he's going to get paid if he brings in more runners, right? Closer to what he produced back in 2022. And he's going to get paid if he shows that he has the ability to go gap to gap and drive in those runners and have respectable clutch numbers that we've been talking about and calling out with Pete Alonso all 2024 long. Like you said, the home runs, he's a natural home run hitter. Pitchers are going to make mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to make mistakes. They're going to try to first attack him on the outside part of the zone with the curveball and the slider that he basically couldn't do anything against last season. But when they make that mistake, they're going to hang one, or they're going to groove a fastball right down the middle because they have to throw a fastball at some point to Pete Alonso, and then he can't miss. That's the key to success for Pete Alonso. And I don't envision his home run production going down. We just need his production with runners on base, especially less than 2 outs, to go up. But even with 2 outs, there's no excuses in the middle of this lineup with the personnel that the Mets have. Whether he's batting 3 or 4, he needs to get the job done. So I'm encouraged. I'm very encouraged about everything that I've seen so far with Pete Alonso. Again, a small sample size. We can't jump to any rash conclusions, but it's good to see him taking that approach the opposite way. And then all the pull side, results follow thereafter. I was going to ask you about, before we go to the pitching, real quick, about Jeff McNeil, because it seems like Jeff McNeil, and I think that this is what you're trying to get to a couple of streams ago when we were doing the post game for the split squad, he's using a different bat. He's not using his knobless bat anymore. He's using a bat with a knob on it. And I think that there was something out there, a report out there stating that, Jeff McNeil is saying that he was trying to hit for a little bit more power this year. And I don't quite understand it, but if anybody knows anything about the bat, right? I mean, you use a knobless bat for more control. That's why he had a lot of success back in 2022.
Yeah.
And then you can't really get that leverage with your bottom hand if there's no knob. So that indicates to me that he is trying to hit for a little bit more power. Now, I'm not saying that he's selling all out for home runs, but he's probably trying to get some lift on the baseball and hit it in the gap more consistently for extra base hits. What do you think of that approach, especially with there being no shift in the league? Do you think that's going to contribute to more success, or is that only going to hinder him?
No, I don't think it will. I think it's a stupid approach, to be quite honest with you. I think that, when you're a guy that can bat 290, 300, and, when your batting average is around that area, he's probably going to hit 10 to 12 home runs. What is the jump in power going to be? If it's going to be 20 plus home runs, then we can have a conversation about it. But I don't think it's going to be like, what is it going to be? 3 or 4 more home runs? I don't think that's going to make or break anything, to be quite honest with you. I don't want to see him batting 220 just to have 3 or 4 more home runs. That's not going to, make anything helpful with this lineup. That's why I don't like the approach. And I talked about the coaches as well. Unless he's very stubborn and wants to do this, or the coaches are telling him to do this, it's a wrong decision. Either way, you slice it. Having a knobless bat, again, if you played baseball, you understand it right away. The reason why he used a knobless bat was because it was easy to, like you said, Chris, to control. It's a natural choking up on the bat. So he had more control, but he had less of the plate because obviously he's choking up. It's less bat that's going to be coming across the zone. When you have a knob on the bat, obviously your hands are going to be a little bit more down. You're going to have more coverage on the plate, so you might hit that outside pitch a little bit easier than you would with the knob without the knobless bat. So maybe his approach is, if I have more coverage over the plate with the bat, with this bat that has a knob now, and he might just think, all right, maybe I can flick that ball over the right field, when it's on the outside corner instead of just going the opposite way. I don't know the approach. That's the thing that I don't understand. If Jeff McNeil's going to be a 10 home run hitter to a 20 home run guy, that's a conversation to have. But I don't see that. I don't see that happening to him. And again, what we need from him now, because we're gonna have so much power in the lineup. Just look at add Nimmo in there, right? If you don't even worry about Alvarez, you have 1 through 5. If Nimmo is batting fifth, each one of those guys can hit 30 home runs. I mean, I'm
Yep.
sorry, each top four
20.
can hit 30 home runs, and Nimmo can hit 25, 26, 27. You don't need that power from Jeff McNeil. What you need from Jeff McNeil is to get on base,
Right.
especially if he's at the bottom third of the order. Because what do you want the bottom third of the order to do? Get on base to flip the lineup over to your big boys, to the run producers on your team, to the top of the order. If he's not going to do that, and the strikeouts are going to still be up because he's trying to launch a ball over the fence, and his average is going to be less than 250, I mean, he's looking to lose his job. Like I said that in my spring training report last night. He's looking to lose his job. Like if that's your goal, congratulations. Like you're doing a great job of it, because it's going to be Acuna or Beatty that's going to be having your job. And again, that might excite a lot of Met fans. But the fact of the matter is, the Mets aren't trading Jeff McNeil. He's either going to be taking up a roster spot on the bench, or taking up a roster spot, starting and not playing well. So both aspects are hurting your team. And that's the problem that I have. We need Jeff McNeil. Again, if Jeff McNeil was batting second again, maybe I would say, okay, let's see that approach with a little bit more power, just to make it interesting. Just because you have Juan Soto behind you or Pete Alonso behind you, you have more protection. You're probably going to see more fastballs. I get. But when you're batting in front of Winker or Starlin Marte and Jose Siri is behind you, people are not afraid to go to Jose Siri because he's a big strikeout guy. They're going to work around you as much as possible to try to get you out, off the plate. And if you're going to be swinging for the fences and not trying to, just get singles and maybe be a gap to gap hitter, you're just useless. And again, I think I'm not saying purposely, I think he's stupidly trying to lose his job, like just unaware that he's going to lose his job, because it's just this stupid approach. You never were a power hitter, and he's not a big guy. Like Nimmo grew into a more of a power hitter. Again, he jumped from 15 to 25 home runs in 2 years. Like that's a huge jump. 10 home runs or more is a huge jump. Why I can
Yeah.
see why you're going. But remember, we talked about it for a couple of years. Even if we weren't together on shows, we talked about it. We said, look at Nimmo. Nimmo was a number 2 hitter because he took the walk. He would hit the outside pitch and take it to left field and get a single. He turned into more of a power hitter, but the power is 10 to 15 more home runs than it was previously with Brandon Nimmo. Jeff McNeil, I don't think he's going to hit more than 5 home runs, and that's not, it's a little bit better, but when your average is going to drop and your strikeouts are going to be up, it's not a good sign at the bottom third of the order.
Well, again, you know what this league is geared towards now, especially with the shift being banned. I'm not really sure he's hunting the extra 10 to 15, or not 15, definitely not 15, but the extra 10 home runs. I really think he's hunting the extra doubles, because we know that this game is geared towards, right, doubles and extra base hits, maybe even legging out a triple, more so than singles. There's a handful of hitters in this league that can survive being a pure contact, high average, very high average singles hitter. And Jeff McNeil was one of them, right? The primary example, as we all know, is Luis Arias. That's the primary example. And Jeff McNeil was in that category, but something shifted when the shift got taken away. And so I think to make up for that, he's slowly starting to realize that, hey, I just need to stop using this knobless bat, because you said more control, shortening the bat, making the bat a little bit more balanced in terms of the weight instead of being top heavy. And I just need to hit it in the gap. And that's where I think the actual thought process is stemming from. But it's an interesting topic, and this is something that we're going to be monitoring at least for the first couple months of the season, because like you said, you're definitely right. This is a gamble for him if he wants to keep his starting job on the New York Mets. Now, he's already gotten paid. He's already got that contract. He's under contract for the next, 2 seasons, something like that. He's got the money. And so I don't really necessarily know if he cares if he goes to the bench or gets traded at this point. But I think he's making this last ditch effort to try to at least keep up with the way that the game is shifting towards in terms of what it values, and that is extra base hits and doubles for Jeff McNeil. So we'll see. It's a gamble. We'll see if it's going to pay off.
Can I just bring up something that people are bringing up in the chat? There's a couple of people that are saying that I think it's River saying that Nimmo is very likely to hit cleanup. He's not. All right, I find that very hard to believe. He was terrible last year in the 3 spot, and I think he cleaned up a couple of times. He was absolutely terrible. His numbers are garbage in that spot. He's better batting 5th, and you're not putting Vientos 5th. That makes no sense. You're getting less at bats for a guy who hit 27 home runs last year, and if he had a full season, he probably would have hit 30 and probably even closer to 100 RBIs. You're not taking Vientos further back in the lineup when that's a guy that is going to be one of your better power hitters and going to be more run producers. Him batting 5th doesn't make any sense. Nimmo has shown you that as much as his RBIs have been there, right? He struggled in the quote unquote run producing slots in the lineup in 3 or 4. His numbers are not better than batting second. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Batting second in the order or batting 5th. He has better numbers there. For whatever reason, he does, right? Though the approach that I like about Brandon Nimmo, again, I wouldn't mind him cleaning up. But again, when you have Vientos and Pete Alonso that are probably going to be a 3 or 4, it doesn't make sense to move any of them out of that top 4. It just doesn't make sense, right? There's a pretty good chance that Alonso and Vientos are going to have more RBIs than Brandon Nimmo. Right. And I just don't like Brandon Nimmo in the 3 or 4 spot. It seems like he tries to do too much in those prime run producing spots. I don't know if you agree, Chris, but I don't want to see Vientos batting 5th. I don't even want to see Pete Alonso batting 5th. There's no need to overthink putting Pete Alonso or Vientos batting 5th. Now, depending on who might have a day off, maybe you might throw that Nimmo in that spot just for a game, just for giving guys days off. Maybe if Vientos is getting a day off, or Lindor's getting a day off, and you have to switch it up a little bit, fine. But I think Nimmo in the 5 spot is actually crucial for this team because he can be that swing man. He can be that base hit machine, and he can provide that power as well. So he's like a Swiss Army knife. Batting 5th in that order I think is perfect for Nimmo, where I think he thrives the most. I think his best games were when he was in that 5 spot. Obviously with Vientos it was a little, weird because Nimmo kind of moved around a lot last year, but his worst games were in a run producing spot. Even though he had a ton of RBIs, a lot of those RBIs were out of that 3-4 spot. It was in the 2 hole or the 5 hole or wherever outside of those 2 spots. Chris, I don't know if you agree with that.
Well, I mean, I don't really have a take on the whole Nimmo 4 versus 5. Honestly, I'll say that I can see a world where the Mets do it if they're going to prioritize those left-right matchups. Because again, if you're going to hit Juan
Yeah.
Soto second, that's where Nimmo would pop up in that 4 spot, being left, right, left. If you're having Pete Alonso bat 3, but I'm curious also. Like this is my primary thing with Brandon Nimmo, with him having such a down year. And also, we know the recent transition, like we just mentioned a couple minutes ago, going from, that 15, 16 home run guy up to that, 23, 24, 25 plus home run guy. I'm curious to see if he's going to continue to emphasize that, because you're right. When he did make that switch over, the Mets got so much production moving Lindor from the 3 spot to the leadoff spot, but then subsequently they got less production out of Brandon Nimmo in that same move, moving him down the order. And that was a guy, when I saw his power number start to shift, I was like, why not take a chance and put him in the middle of the lineup? And they did that. They did exactly what I wanted, and he didn't succeed. So I'm very curious. I think the 5th spot is probably the best for him, but I can see a scenario where they put him in that 4 spot and retry that. But I want to see what his approach is, because just like Jeff McNeil, right? You have guys that can get on base at a high clip if they are not hitting for their peak power. What's the incentive for them to not hit for their peak power? More so Brandon Nimmo, when you're talking about the top 5 and guys that can get on base consistently, given that he has that 25 plus home run potential, do you think he strays away from that? Because I'm not convinced that he will.
I don't think he will either. I don't think he needs to. I just think the fact that when he gets if he goes in that 3 or 4 spot, I think he overthinks it. I think, Brendan Nimmo seems like a guy that, has an approach and goes for it, but it seems like he tries too hard to be that extra run producer and tries to be Alonso, tries to be Mark Vientos, Juan Soto, those big run producing guys. And he could be that, but I think when he starts to overthink it, I think he felt like he needed to do more in those 3 and 4 spots, when the simple and the simple aspect or the simple thinking is put him in a spot where he doesn't have to overthink it, right? Be who Brandon Nimmo needs to be, right? Just be Brandon Nimmo. And I think either in the 2 hole or the 5 hole, I think that suits him best because I don't think he overthinks it, right? He's not in the top 4, so he doesn't have to be that, oh my God, I got to get this run home. I got to hit this home run. I just feel like he just goes at with his approach and just, goes after it. I don't think he tries to overthink anything. It was clear that he was trying way too hard last year in that 3 and 4 spot, specifically when he switched positions with Lindor in the leadoff spot from the 3 spot. When he went there, it just seemed like he was trying to hit a home run every time at the plate, and he was striking out more. The walks were down, the on base was down, and the average was down. And again, I'm not putting him 5th. I think Nimmo can be whatever he wants to be in the 5th spot, and I don't think he has to, do too much in that 5th spot. And I think when he doesn't think too much, he has no problem hit 23 to 25 home runs, if not more. So I think to avoid him overthinking, and clearly Nimmo has become a leader. And I think that's another thing too, that where when Nimmo took that mantle over Pete Alonso as well, and took that lead role and started to speak up more, I think he felt like he has to do more. And putting them in that spot, I just feel like Nimmo is just a free-flowing guy, in my opinion. He needs to just play baseball, right? Go balls to the wall, run everything out. Leave him in the 5th spot, and if you want to move him around for a game here or there in the cleanup spot, 3 spot, fine. But I think his best spot right now is number 5 for sure.
I think Easy, we're getting to the point where we're saying Vientos batting 4 and Nimmo 5, if Nimmo is indeed that 5-hole hitter. And this is the comment right here that I wanted to sort of talk about. SS saying Vientos better be this Hall of Famer that everyone keeps talking about this season. First of all, I don't know who's telling anybody that Vientos is this future Hall of Famer, but these unrealistic expectations out of Vientos in year 2 is exactly why I am still going to lobby for him to hit in the 2-hole. That's exactly why. Because, if you put this kind of pressure, right? And I'm not saying it's just SS. I'm saying that this Mets fan base in general and around the league, that Vientos came onto the scene hot, 27 home runs in his first full season. He better outproduce that in year 2. That's a lot of pressure on a guy. And I know that he thrives off of pressure. I understand that.
Like he does.
Yeah. He does 100%. And so if he bats 3 or 4, I'm sure he can handle it. But this is why I'm like, that's a little bit of a gamble. And getting him the best pitches with these increased expectations, again, nobody's selling anybody on him being a future Hall of Famer, right? Just like I'm not going to short him. Maybe he could be, maybe he won't. I don't know. Who knows? Way too early into his career. But I think we can objectively state that there's going to be a lot less pressure for him in that 2-hole if he were to bat there than the 3 or 4 spot. Do you think that matters for him at all?
I don't think it's the Vientos confidence that he spills out, and it seemed like he thrives under that. I still think it's about Pete Alonso not having the trust in him as of yet. I think until they get the trust, and I don't think spring training is going to change that for either guy, to be quite honest with you. You could tell how Vientos likes that pressure. I think the mental hurdle of him trying to win a job or going back to the minors, once that went away and they gave him the job, he seemed to put his mind at ease. And it's just baseball at this point. I think they think clearly Vientos handled everything with perfection almost. The way he approached the game once he got the starting job away from Brett Beatty, he seemed like a totally different player. With Pete, I think it has more to do with Pete Alonso, Chris. I said it before. I don't think they trust Pete Alonso as of yet. The reason why they have him between Soto and Vientos, because they believe in Mark Vientos' confidence. They know what Juan Soto's confidence is. I think they don't trust Pete Alonso. I think it has more to do with that than actually Vientos.
This is a great comment, and this is exactly the type of thinking that I am in line with when it comes to the lineup with Easy here. I don't like Alonso third and Vientos fourth. If you bat Nimmo fifth, I'd rather split up Alonso and Vientos because, again, two high strikeout guys, two guys that will definitely be double play candidates if they hit the baseball on the ground. And that's why I would rather Soto be in between a guy like Vientos and Alonso to split that possibility up and not have that go back to back. But again, I mean, like you said time and time again, it's all subjective because when you have this versatile of a top five, Mendoza's going to have a lot of tough decisions. And what we see necessarily come opening day, we know that he's leaning toward Juan Soto second, and we can assume Pete Alonso third, and thereafter it's anybody's guess. But just because we necessarily see that come opening day doesn't mean he's going to change things
Correct.
around or he's not going to change things around in the first month. But I agree with this comment from M Easy right here.
Well, speaking of that, and I know Easy said that, and Chris, I know you said that too. Again, the other day, Mendoza went on WFAN with Evan Roberts. They asked him the question once again. Pete Alonso batting second, and he said that's not happening. He said that twice in a month already. He already said that twice.
It
As
had to
soon
be
as
Vientos at that point. Yeah.
and well, that's what I'm saying. Like it might be Vientos and the Pete Alonso situation. I don't think he's going to be batting second at all because
Right.
nowadays it's not just the power hitter that they move up to the number two spot, the big power hitter. It's usually the best hitter used to be batting third, right? In old time sake, the best hitter was batting third, right? And your best power hitter was batting fourth. Now they like the best hitter batting second and your best power hitter hitting third. Like if you notice what they're doing, like Aaron Judge, he'll probably be batting second, with the Yankees. Like it's just weird. Like go around the lineups, right? Their best hitters are the power hitters are the best hitters. Excuse me, is hitting basically second, and some of them might be actually power hitters as well. But their best player, I just feel like Mendoza said it twice. Like I'm okay with any combination, to be quite honest with you. Like we can agree to disagree with different combinations, but it's still going to be lethal, regardless of where they're going to
Yeah.
bat. What you want,
100%.
you want to optimize all these guys, right? If it's not working, Mendoza's going to change it. I'm not worried about that. He's not Mickey Callaway, who just leaves everything the way it is and just
Oh,
hopes for the
goodness.
best and has a smile on his face and say, "Hey, love your players," right? Mendoza is not
We
afraid.
battled. We
Yeah,
battled.
and Mendoza is not afraid to change the lineup if it's not working, right? That's a drastic change he did last year as a first-time manager. You think as a second-year manager, he's not going to have the balls to do it? Yeah, absolutely he will. He has no problem moving any of these guys, right? He said it early on I think it was at the winter meetings, right after they got Soto, and they were like, we know you don't have Pete Alonso yet, but he like, where are you going to bat Soto in the lineup? He goes, oh, actually, I'm a liar. It was actually a little bit, I think, right when pitchers and catchers started, they asked him that question. He says, I'm going to ask these guys. I'm going to see where they're most comfortable, but ultimately, I have the final decision. But if he's going to want these guys to be comfortable, he's going to put them probably where they're most comfortable first. And if it's not working, he goes, "Well, guys, I tried what you were comfortable with. Now it's my turn." So I can totally see him, Soto third, Alonso fourth, Vientos second. Like I could see that tomorrow. I could see Nimmo batting in 2 or 3, like and stretching out the lineup a little bit more. They can actually do that. So I'm not worried about Mendoza, and whatever we see on opening day can change. After the first 10 games, I'm not worried about that. And the best thing about Mendoza is that he's not afraid to change up the lineup. If your feelings are hurt, I'm not doing this to hurt your feelings. I'm doing this to win games. And that's something that he has the balls to do as a first year manager, which I know he'll do going forward and into the future.
All right, well, let's move on here because only on this post-game show between Rob and myself, we can talk about lineup configurations for as long as we have, and we still have a lot of other stuff to get into. So again, hopefully everybody's enjoying this stream, enjoying this post-game, and going over the latest Mets news, notes, rumors, etc. Smash the thumbs up button if you enjoy the content on both channels, and make sure to subscribe and keep dropping those live chat comments. Again, we want to be interactive. We want to get to your comments as best as possible. All right. Moving on to today's pitching, very nice to see Paul Blackburn out there pitching a scoreless inning. I didn't really check what his pitch count was, but he got through the first inning. They didn't want to stretch him out anymore. No multiple innings for Paul Blackburn coming off of that back. I guess whatever it was with his lower back that he needed injections for that ended his season last year effectively, but no earned runs, one strikeout. He said he felt good in the post game, and Mendoza was impressed when he went for the post game comments and media availability. He was impressed with the sinker that Paul Blackburn had on display in that inning. So, Rob, the names in green here, what I want to focus on, because again, Genesis Cabrera coming in for that second inning also is competing for a roster spot. He's a fringe bullpen guy, high electricity. He also posted a scoreless inning with 2 strikeouts compared to Paul Blackburn's 1 strikeout. How do you assess the pitching from today? And we're going to get into the graphic of the current rotation and what the Mets can do externally versus internally in just a second with the updated projected Mets open day roster graphic that I'm going to be putting up here. But just in general, the question mark was always, is Paul Blackburn going to be ready? Are the Mets going to need him in the rotation with how plentiful the rotation was in terms of the plethora of names that they had before the Montas and Manaea injuries? Again, quantity, maybe a little bit more than quantity or quality, and what we were saying this whole entire offseason, quantity over quality, excuse me. But now that we know that Paul Blackburn, if he's healthy, is going to be a mainstay in this rotation, at least for the first month and a half, what do you assess in terms of expectations for him going into this season?
Well, he's not going to wow you, right? He's a professional pitcher, right? He was supposed to give us innings. That was the idea, right? Even if he's the number 6 starter or if he's barely making the rotation, he was going to be the innings guy. That I'm assuming he's healthy and 100% if they're going to throw him out there so early in spring. And I know it's only 1 inning, but it's early on in spring. I'm okay with it. Again, I think it was a spinal leakage last
Yes, I think
year
that's what it was.
that
Yeah.
he cost his rest of the season, and that's not a baseball injury. That's just bad fucking luck. I mean, who the hell wants that? But it's nice to see that he's healthy. He did strike out somebody 1 inning. Again, we're not going to go crazy here, but all you want is health at this point, right? I don't care the numbers, what they do, right? They're all working on pitches. Most of these guys are trying to stay healthy. That's the key at this point now, right? I rather see professional pitchers, professional rotation guys, right? Paul Blackburn is a major league starter, right? Regardless if he's going to be at the bottom end of your rotation. Well, now he's going to be probably the 4th starter in your rotation.
Right.
When he was supposed to probably project as a number 5 or a 6 in this rotation. He's a professional guy. He's going to take the ball every 5th day while healthy. He's going to give you, 5 innings most of the time. And he'll give you a chance to win. He's a Jose Quintana type. I think Jose Quintana is better, but he's a right-handed version of that. He's a professional guy that will help you, give you a chance to win a ball game. That's all you can ask for the bottom of the back part of your rotation is guys to come into a game like Blackburn and give your team a chance to win, especially with the lineup we're supposed to have and score a lot of runs. Keep us in ball games. That's the idea with the back end of rotations. And if Blackburn's healthy, he's going to be huge for this rotation, especially with the 2 injuries that we currently have in Manaea and Mata. So good signs from him for sure. Oh, do you want me to say about Genesis Cabrera? Or you want me? Oh, I'm sorry. I think your mic went out. I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
I was muted. Sorry. Yeah, if you want to, because again, I think Genesis Cabrera is definitely, he's not a lock for this bullpen by any means, but the electricity there and that upside, he posted a pretty decent 2024 campaign. So if you want to get into him a little bit, you definitely can.
Yeah, he's nasty. He's definitely nasty. I saw a highlight of it, and it's like, ooh, that's pretty good. And we knew he had an electric arm. Again, if AJ Minter is not on the opening day roster, I think they would want that flamethrower over a Danny Young. To be quite honest with you, a soft tosser who's only basically a lefty specialist. Henderson can barely get anybody out. So that's a good sign. When it comes to Henderson Cabrera and Dwayne's comment, I like Blackburn more than McGill. Unfortunately, we have to use both of those guys. Like I would clearly take if there was one spot in the rotation, I'd take Blackburn over McGill every day of the week. But when you need both of them, you kind of don't have a choice at this point. But Henderson's career looked good.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm actually curious how that, affects the last bullpen spot as well, which we know there's competition for, as well as the rotation, the last bench spot, and also the last bullpen spot, and how Henderson Cabrera it fits into that mold and that equation. But no, I 100% agree with you. Paul Blackburn, I'm taking him over Tyler McGill as well. He's not going to wow you. He's not going to overpower anybody. He's not a flamethrower, but like you said, he's a true professional. And we saw, at least in the first, couple of outings with him as a New York Met last season, he had some success. And clearly David Stearns, this was a guy that David Stearns identified at the deadline and said that he can help out the rotation. And it just sucks that it was kind of a freak injury. I mean, I don't even know what spinal fluid leakage is, to be honest with you. It sounds painful. I don't know if it actually is or not. But anyways, that sucks that it kept him out for the rest of the season. But hopefully he's back stronger than ever, because this Mets rotation, the way that it's currently set up, is going to definitely need him as that fourth or fifth starter.
Yeah.
And right now it looks like he's projecting to be the fourth starter. So, I think that worries a lot of fans. Does it worry me a little bit? Yeah, sure. It worries me a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to go out there and produce innings and put up innings, and at least keep the Mets in the ball game. And that's the most that you can hope for from these starters, given the injuries, given the lineup that the Mets are going to have. So let's get into some of the latest, I guess, updates surrounding the New York Mets. Going from top to bottom, Daniel Nunez will not appear in spring training action anytime soon. We know that an injury also kept him out for the rest of his season when he came onto the scene strong in 2024 in Queens. Daniel Nunez, that is. And there's no injury concerns with Daniel Nunez. I think they're just trying to take it slow, given the rehab process and just ramping up from that injury, coming back from that injury. So, he's probably going to be appearing in games, I would like to think, sometime before opening day, but that he's on track at least to be ready come opening day. Starling Marte will begin the season, or begin taking batting practice, I should correct myself there, in March. He has been dealing with a sore knee since last summer, right? Which is nothing new with Starling Marte. These injuries are nothing new with him, which is probably why the Mets have been wanting to trade him all off season, and probably still want to, for any takers out there that will give up something of value in return. This is what we've been talking about Starling Marte all off season long, Rob. The logjam that he now creates going into the last season under contract in a Mets uniform. I understand that he's going to be taking batting practice probably in the backfields of spring training come March time. This doesn't sound like I usually never overreact to something like this. Like, I'm not going to do it for Daniel Nunez. I'm not going to do it because Kodai Senga is not appearing in any games just yet. And the Mets came out and said that they're going to take things slow with Kodai Senga as well. But this Starling Marte thing, I don't know what to make of it. What is your confidence level that he's going to maintain health? And what is your confidence level that he's going to be on this roster even come May or June time to begin with?
I think he actually will be. Unless I don't think they'll get rid of him unless he's packaging a deal at the trade deadline. Just to get a little bit of money off the books. Maybe that might be the idea. But the issue with Marte, not only that he's a logjam, is that when he actually is on the field or at least holding a bat, he's actually clutch. If you go back with the playoffs and in September, he was one of our best hitters with runners in scoring position in September and October. Like, it's crazy to think, but he was like, everybody forgets, but guess who was the one that got that extra run in that Milwaukee game in Game 3 after Pete Alonso hit the home run? It was Starling Marte hitting the base hit the right field, bringing home another guy. So, I think that's why the Mets are hesitant, that they just don't want to trade him to get rid of the money. They actually want something in return. If it was a bullpen arm, I think they would have done it, but they're not doing it for just anybody because of the situation that Marte could bring clutch-wise, because it doesn't matter if he can miss 60 games. He'll come back in day one and he'll get 2 hits. Like, he's just that type of guy. He's not a good fielder anymore. His legs are, obviously, against him at this point. But when he's actually at the plate, he provides some type of offense. And I think that's what the Mets are trying to do here. And that's why they're taking their time with him, even with the knee issue right now. He's probably taking swings in one of the other fields. I kind of think that when they need him, and he's not going to play a lot, he'll play, and every once in a while he might get an outfield spot once in a blue moon, but he's going to be batting against lefties, which he kills at times. So I think that, and I don't see him like him being the type of guy that can be sitting down and get cold because he's been sitting down. I think he's a professional hitter. He dominates left-handed pitching, and I think that's why me and you don't like the platoon DH. I never liked it. But in this spot where you're trying to keep Marte healthy and you have an outfield that you don't need Marte in the outfield, it's probably the best bet while he's still on the roster. So I'm not here or there because I don't see who would you replace him with. Like I don't see Acuna and Beatty being on this roster and having more infield depth as a whole if Marte is not here. Like you would just get somebody who's worse than him, worse than Marte, who might be obviously healthier, but probably worse than him just to have an extra outfielder on the bench. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I think it's probably the least of our worries, to be quite honest with you, because Beatty and Acuna, if that would be the case, if Marte's gone, everybody would just assume Beatty and Acuna would be the two guys that would make the roster spot, but it would take at bats away from both of them because
And
of
it
the
wouldn't make
position.
sense because Beatty's a lefty anyways, and you still have
Correct.
Winker.
Yeah, exactly. So it would probably be like Canario. He might have the opportunity to be that right-handed bat if he
What do you
looks.
think of him? What do you think of him? Did you see that trade go down?
That was a weird trade because God knows we don't need another outfielder, right? He's a failed prospect, right? He's shown a little bit of signs last year, a couple of games with the Cubs. I'm not sure what happened there with the Cubs, but I mean,
Almost
they
an
still,
800 OPS last year, Rob.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because they got Kyle Tucker and he's like nowhere really to play him anymore because he's more of a corner outfielder. I don't know. Like he has no more options, and David Stearns likes to get bringing guys here that has a ton of options. He has no options. The only way he's going to be in this organization, either he makes the team on the roster, or they try to put him on waivers to get him to AAA, and nobody picks him up. So I don't understand the logic here. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they're hoping, all right, we'll have him in camp in spring, let him get a couple at bats, see what he looks like. And if they either have a trade partner for Marte, or if Marte is not ready to go on opening day, then you can have Caminero just replace him until he comes back. So you still keep him. I think that's probably the idea. Or again, we don't know what's going on with Nimmo, right? That could be another wild card that we have no idea about. Right? They say Nimmo's going to. I know you don't have it on the graphic, but Nimmo doesn't. He might similar to Marte. Sometime in March is when Nimmo's going to start going here, and there's no guarantee he's going to remain healthy while going through that process of playing 9 innings, playing 6, 7 innings in spring training. I think Caminero is a emergency plan. If they happen to get rid of Marte, or either Marte or Nimmo are not ready to go on opening day, Caminero is better than probably most situations or most opportunities the Mets have for anybody else, because who would they fill that spot with than a guy that can play the outfield with good defensively, and he's got a sneaky good bat, which is still why I don't understand the Cubs got rid of him, but that's here or there. I think he's just a security blanket just in case, because they're not using Ryan Clifford. They're not using Drew Gilbert. They're clearly not using Acuna or Beatty or any other infielder to play outfield. That whole plan or idea is squashed. So, and Jet Williams is probably not ready yet. So where are you going in the outfield if Nimmo and Marte are not ready to go? Right? Yeah, you got Tyron Taylor, but you have that extra outfield utility guy that's not there. So I think Caminero is probably just a security blanket for either of those two guys not making an open day roster.
And I said, and no, I talked about Canario yesterday on my post game stream. It was such an unusual trade because it was like maybe he could be like a flippable candidate prospect for like another trade to ultimately get what the Mets want. And then I was thinking like Starling Marte, like I don't want to say this, but inevitably we have to at least plan at this point of Marte's career that there's most likely going to be some sort of injury concern with the knee soreness and everything that he's been dealing with. It's unfortunate because again, Marte against left-handed pitching when he's healthy is awesome. I mean, if there was a platoon, this is the best version of a platoon, even though that we don't like the DH platoon. That's the best scenario between him and Winker. But can we rely on Marte's health? For me, the answer is no. So it does seem like Canario is that backup plan if he does stick around in this organization. And it's not the end all be all because I also just don't understand why Canario left that Cubs organization. why they decided to trade him in the first place. I mean, you can consider him a failed prospect, but can you really? He's only 24 years old. His power is absolutely insane that he displayed in the minor league farm system over there in Chicago. What was it, 37 home runs back in 2022, 18 home runs, I believe, in 2023 across all the levels that he appeared in. And in his limited sample size over the past 2 seasons in a Cubs uniform, I think it was like 21 games in the past 2 seasons, he's looked decent. He looked
Yeah,
decent.
and Chris, like the Cubs aren't good enough to trade a guy like that. Like he can't be useful to a Cubs team that is kind of borderline playoff team. And that doesn't make sense to me. Again, their loss, I guess our gain, we only gave cash, so that's how much they thought of him. But maybe he's like a Brett Beatty, right? We don't hear him every day. We're not watching Cubs news every single second. Can he be a guy that's a quadruple A player, right? That he goes crazy in triple A and double A. Anytime he goes to the minors, he looks like an all-star. Then when he comes at the major leagues, he can't hit major league pitching. And I know it's a very small sample size, but maybe that's where they are, similar to where Brett Beatty is with the Mets.
It's certainly plausible. It's certainly plausible. I think that's a good point, and we'll keep. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on that Canario
Absolutely.
situation. That's something to monitor. And the last point here, Kodai Senga continues to throw live batting practice on field. This is after yesterday the Mets came out and said that he is not going to appear in-game action anytime soon. No injury concerns from the Mets. That's what the Mets said. Just trying to slow him down, ramp him up in terms of that comfortability on the mound without needing to go full game speed, etc., covering his position, etc. And I know that gets a lot of fans on edge, considering the way that this rotation is looking like right now, that we'll see on the next slide. But he did throw on-field batting practice today. He got Ronnie Mauricio to strike out via the swing and miss. And he also surrendered a bomb, an absolute missile to Francisco Alvarez, which is good to see from Francisco Alvarez, that perspective, because again, with his mechanics and the way that he's looked like so far early into spring training in game with the new mechanics, it just seems like his timing is off. But it looks like Kodai Senga threw him a nice little fastball up in the zone, and Alvarez had no problems turning on it. And again, like we're not overreacting either way. I mean, one good swing from Alvarez is good news. One bad pitch from Kodai Senga doesn't mean that he's gonna, be a wash in 2025. So it was good to see that matchup, but it's also good to see that Kodai Senga is just throwing in general, at
Yeah.
least off the mound to live hitters.
Yeah, the thing with Alvarez, we know he can hit the high fastball. It's everything that's belt and below is where he has a major problem. He can't control his swing. Like he swings over those pitches almost every time. And I don't know what type of mechanics he's changed. I don't know if it's less of an uppercut. It hasn't looked like it in a game. It looked like it's more of an uppercut. But again, if it's anything from the belt and below, he has problems with. That was what he had problems with last year. Slowly, early on, it seemed like he can't hit those pitches still in spring training. So whatever mechanics he's doing, I hope it helps him. Obviously, I don't want him to be, because as of right now, he's a failed top prospect in my opinion. Because when you're a top MLB prospect and what was he in the top 10, top 5 of MLB prospects not too long ago? You need to be better, like much better. And we're counting on you to be much better because, again, the worst case scenario, Luis Torrens will play every day, to be quite honest with you. If Alvarez isn't providing the offense, and I still don't trust him behind the plate, I think he tries to, frame too many pitches and wild pitches, and he got better in the playoffs. Obviously, we talked about that, but Luis Torrens, he can be a starter on some other teams, to be quite honest with you. So for him to be a backup is huge, and I don't think the Mets again will hesitate to use Torrens a little bit more if Francisco Alvarez is not hitting, because that's why he's here. He's here to hit. If he doesn't hit, I don't think he's good enough defensively to actually keep in the lineup right now. But I'm sorry, with Kodai, I totally went off guard. But with Senga scares the hell out of me. I've said it. I don't trust him at all. Right now that it looks like we possibly might go to a 5-man rotation. And again, if you look at the schedule, and I don't know if everybody listens to the Rico Bronya with Evan Roberts, he actually kind of did the quote unquote schedule, Matt. We're not going to need a 6 starter with all the off days. until like the middle of April, like April 20th or 19th. So you got about 15 games or so before you need a sixth starter because of all the off days. It kind of works out that you're going to be able to give Senga extra rest just based on the off days. We have a lot of weird off days because of the opening days, and just the gaps in off days that are very close together in the first month. So Senga's going to get his rest, and you're not going to need a six starter if the Mets go that route. The fact of the matter is, when they were trying so hard to have a six-man rotation, and it's kind of looking less and less likely that it could be possible of a six-man rotation, where do I see Kodai Senga? I don't know. He doesn't pitch well on regular 4 days rest pitching on the fifth day. He does not. He's best when he pitches on his sixth or seventh day. That concerns me. That always concerned me. And for him, I'm not going crazy that he's not pitching in live games. I'd like to see that, but they're being very careful with him. And again, this is our ace at the moment. We don't know what's going on with Sean Manaea. It could be a week. It could be a month. Who knows? Obliques are tricky. We're counting on Kodai Senga to be 2023 Kodai Senga. I don't know. I'm not confident in Kodai Senga at all. I need to see him not in a terrible situation in the playoffs, because that was a no-win situation for him, in my opinion. That's why I never liked that decision. But I got to see him in real games, right? I want to see him battle a little bit of pressure on him, not, laughing and giggling with the batter in live BP. I don't want to see that, because if you saw when he gave up a bomb to Francisco Alvarez, he smirked. And clearly Alvarez probably said something to him. But it's like, I need to see him in real action, because I just don't know what we're going to get for him, right? He pitched 1 year out of 2. That doesn't spill confidence to me. And I just don't know. I'm confused with this Senga situation.
Yeah, we'll see. And at the very minimum, I mean, them being so careful with him, it clearly shows me one of two things, maybe both, right? Shows me that the Mets front office and Carlos Mendoza are really scared about if there's any other injuries that go on in this rotation, that they are ultra screwed more so than they already are. Because at least at some point they think that what the situation that they're in right now is salvageable. Via whatever route they're planning to take, because we're going to assess that here in just a second. But two, is their confidence level in Senga staying healthy, is that high? So it could be one of those two things or both. And I agree with you in the fact that Senga is a wild card in terms of the health factor. I think the production will be fine. I really do think the production will be fine from him.
But
But
the
it's
issue,
the health for Kodai Senga. He needs to be on the field in order to produce. And I think
sure,
that's where
sure.
everybody should be scared at
But
that
but
point.
the thing is, here we're worrying about two things. We're worrying about one, health, and two, can you actually get him enough rest to where he's comfortable on the mound and produces? Because we already seen it. Again, I looked at his numbers. If you guys want to do a little bit of homework, do a little bit of homework. When he has 4 days rest, regular rest, and pitches on the fifth day, his numbers are not good. I think it's just under 5 ERA. That is not what we need from Kodai Senga. If when he has 5 days off and pitches on a sixth day, or 6 days off pitching on a seventh day, he's under a 3. That's a huge difference from what you're looking for here. And that's concerning to me when you're looking for this guy to be the ace of a staff. I'm not considering an ace of a staff that needs all that to go right to pitch, to get on the mound, number one, and pitch well, number two. That scares the hell out of me, because anytime you're going to need this guy, let's say, it's what if we go through a 12, 13 game stretch and we're still going with this 5-man rotation because of maybe more injuries, which, let's be honest, guys, there's probably going to be another injury during the season. Pitchers get hurt. Like, unfortunately, I'm not trying to put it into existence. It's just a reality here,
That's
right?
true.
The Mets were very healthy for the most part last year, other than Kodai Senga, right? David Peterson was never thought of to be in this rotation last year, but because the expectations weren't high, nobody paid attention that 3 guys in our rotation last year had 30+ starts in Manaea, Severino, Quintana. The problem here is that who's doing that right now? There's no confidence in that, and that's the issue. Is that I don't see in a 10-game stretch with no off days. What if it's a 10-game West Coast trip where there's no rain for a possibility, and guess what happens, right? Senga's gonna have to pitch on regular rest on a 4 days, and then pitch on the fifth day, maybe twice in that same 2 week span, that scares the hell out of me because he does not do well in that situation. Why the Mets are going to a 6-man rotation, even if there's lesser guys on the back end of the rotation that shouldn't be in a major league rotation, is where I have the problem. They're catering too much to Kodai Senga to hopefully have him pitch well and stay healthy. That concerns me because all you're doing is putting pitchers that we don't want to see in this rotation in Griffin Cannon and Tyler McGill and act like it's okay. It's not. But again, it's the philosophy they're dealing with. It's the plan they're trying to work with here. I'm hoping it's successful. I just don't feel it's a successful way to win ball games when you are counting on Kodai Senga to be at least the top 2 starter, and to not have him pitch every fifth day concerns me because that you need those guys when you're in a losing streak. And you say, "Hey, Senga, can we pitch today? We lost 6 in a row. We need you to be a stopper." I don't feel right. I need that extra day. That's not an ace. That's not a top line starter when he needs to be pampered that much, in my opinion.
So, and I mean, listen, the concerns with this rotation right now are valid. And I spoke about this yesterday and talking about just making do with what you have, unfortunately, is the gravity of the situation before Manaya and Montas get back. But I don't know if you still believe the Mets are going to go with the 6-man rotation. I guess you said that the way that the scheduling works with the off days is that they'll go maybe with the 5-man, and then later on in April /
Probably.
early May, they could potentially institute that 6-man rotation. But I went with this graphic. This is the new breakdown, the premise of the 26-man rotation debate and conversation that we've been having all off season long leading up to this point. And I talked about this more so in the aspect of the lineup and who's going to win the last bench spot on the video that I posted this afternoon, actually at noon on the dot. So if you guys missed that, it's in the description of my stream right now. It's also on my channel. It'll be one of the first videos that you see. So go check that out if you missed it. So we can have a discussion about the lineup in terms of the last bench spot being between Acuna and Beatty at this point. Whoever wins that battle. We can talk about the rotation. We can talk about internal versus external. Again, if this is, let's just say this is the outlook. Let's just pretend that the Mets go 6-man rotation out of the gates come opening day. Whether they actually do or don't, it doesn't really matter. Let's pretend that they do, right? For a second. If they're going internal, I'm going to stand by this statement. The quickest fix is just switching Jose Butto and Griffin Canning. Just make that 1-for-1 swap. And I promise you, you do not need an opener. If Griffin Canning, if that's the projection of Griffin Canning starting off in this rotation, he's an opener at best. I don't need any openers in this rotation, given the lack of already not having Manaya and Montas. Right? And that's what I'm going to stick with in terms of the internal routes. I mean, you can also go with the route of Max Kranick and keeping Jose Butto in that bullpen. Now, things change if the Mets go to a 5-man rotation outright come opening day, right? Because then at that point, you'll definitely just end your rotation with Tyler McGill as your 5th starter and then move Griffin Canning over to the bullpen, keep Jose Butto in the bullpen, and then just have, I don't know, at that point, you'll probably have to DFA or just put Sean Reed Foley through waivers and hope he clears.
Yeah.
And all the rest of the guys are not going to be making the team either. Danny Young will be on waivers as well, as he doesn't have any minor league options. So things change, whether it's a 5 or 6-man rotation, excuse me. But what do you think, Rob? Are they going with the 5-man rotation outright or the 6-man rotation? And what would you do with these names on your screen in terms of the Jose Butto discussion and the likes of Griffin Canning?
Well, if Manaya isn't ready in, let's say, the third week of April, let's just say he comes back in 3 starts, he misses 3 starts and pitches at the end of April, I think they can go to a 6-man rotation without Griffin Cannon, obviously. So, but again, this is why Jose, I know we're talking internally here, but this is why Jose Quintana makes so much sense, because you push Griffin Cannon out of the way, and it would be more serviceable to have Blackburn number 4 or number 5, Quintana 4, and Tyler McGill your 5th starter. That's so much more, you could take a deeper breath and be like, all right, it's not so bad, right?
I agree.
This is bad. This is not good. Like as Clay Holmes as your number 3 starter, and then you have Blackburn, who is serviceable. He's fine, but again, the six. That's why I don't like the six man rotation. It's so stupid, right? It's not successful as everybody thinks. More teams would be doing it. More successful teams would be doing it more often if it was successful. You do a 6-man rotation when you don't have good pitchers, enough good pitchers in your rotation, and you're doing that. One, to give guys days off and extra days rest, and because your rotation is not that good. This is not a magical plan by David Stearns here, right? Why do you think the Tampa Bay Rays did it so much? Because they barely had any starting pitching, right? And they were very young, right? Besides Blake Snell, they were working with nothing, but they also have Blake Snell. Like, that's the issue. They're going to a 6-man rotation because the rotation is not very good. Let's be honest about that. Even if it was with Shomania and Frankie Montas, there's still not enough there. To me, it's not. So I feel like they're trying too hard here to do a 6-man rotation. And it's all about Kodai Senga, which, again, I hate doing it for one person. It just doesn't make sense. I think it's silly. And to do it now just to protect Kodai Senga, every 5th and 6th day, you're going to have Tyler McGill and Griffin Cannon losing you freaking games. Like, that is such an idiotic concept to me. It makes no sense. I'd rather have one of those idiots that can barely be on the major league roster than having both of them. And all we're going to do is complain about them. Like, that's what we're going to do. Like, there's no other alternative. And to rob Peter to pay Paul, to take Jose Butto out of the bullpen, and I'm not saying the bullpen's going to be completely hurt by Jose Butto, but Jose Butto is your really good multi-inning guy. All you're doing is replacing Griffin Cannon in that role, and you might see him in spots where Tyler McGill can go 4 innings, and then Griffin Cannon's going to come to replace him in the 5th inning to pitch 2 innings. So you're hurting yourself regardless, because your multi-inning guy is one of your better relievers than Jose Butto. And yeah, you might get a good start from Jose Butto because he can be a starter. All you're doing is piggybacking bad with the bad in the same game, and you still might have problems. So I don't like to take from a strength. I think the rotation is not good enough to move guys out of the bullpen because they're going to be so important, at least for the first month of the season, Chris. I think this is a silly way to go about it. And again, you don't need a 6-man rotation until the middle of the middle of April, which is about 15 games or so into the season. So you don't have to worry about it for at least 3 weeks, which is good. But again, I just don't like that concept. You're just bringing in more bad pitchers in a game when you don't have to do it. It's just a silly concept to me, to be quite honest. I don't like it.
And listen, I know that there are people on either side of the fence when it comes to the Jose Quintana discussion, but it definitely would make me a little bit more relaxed and less on edge in terms of what the Mets are going to do. But I agree with you. All eyes are going to be on opening day. And then all eyes thereafter are going to be on the first 3 weeks of the season if the Mets indeed go to that 5-man rotation with the off days in between in order to get Kodai Senga that valuable rest before they have to go to the 6-man rotation later on in April or May time. That's where we are going to know a lot of things about some of these names and their long-term ability to produce for the 2025 season. So there's a lot of different answers that we can play around with here in terms of what we have internally. And I think that's pretty evident. I'm sure David Stearns has something up his sleeve in terms of the internal process here. I can't figure it out because even when we're talking about internal, whether it's 5 guys in the rotation, 8 guys in the bullpen, or 6 guys in the rotation, 7 guys in the bullpen, you're still going to be looking at a couple of outsiders. And it gets a little bit tricky when you talk about who has minor league options versus who doesn't, who would you risk putting on waivers versus who do you not want to risk putting on waivers, etc. I don't know. Listen, my only stipulation, as I said in the chat, is that I don't want to see Griffin Canning starting ball games. I don't want to have that happen. I don't need to see that happen. That is a recipe for disaster, right? Especially if you're going with the 5-man rotation. There's no chance Griffin Canning is going to crack that rotation. At that point, I'd rather just have Tyler McGill in the rotation if you're going with the 5-man. And as bad as that is to say, that's how much I don't trust Griffin Canning making starts and starting for this team. Griffin Canning was brought in here to be a long reliever, nothing more, nothing less. He was brought in here to be a part of that long relief team where everyone wants to designate Jose Butto in that role. That's fine. I think Jose Butto can actually be something more in the bullpen in terms of pitching in higher leverage situations because he's proven to be that. But if we want to continue to designate him as a long man, right, in the bullpen, that's fine. But I think that Griffin Canning's also going to have to be that because 100% not putting Griffin Canning out there to start games and be that opener, so to speak. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that we can assess this. I just wanted to get everybody acclimated to the outlook here in terms of the lineup, rotation, and bullpen now that we know Manaya and Montas are going to be on the shelf come opening day. And then in terms of the lineup, again, we can have a lot of different discussions. But what do you think of the Acuna Beatty debate in what we've seen so far in spring training? I know that Brett Beatty is not necessarily scorching the baseball every single time he comes up to the plate, but he's 5 for his first 8 in spring training. He's got 2 extra base hits, one of those being a home run. I mean, when we're talking about Brett Beatty and the Mets force feeding Brett Beatty onto this fan base yet again because of the dire situation that is now present with him being a failed prospect at this point, whether that's his own doing or the Mets' own doing and not, bringing him up in the proper way and developing him in the proper way, it doesn't really matter. The situation for Brett Beatty is that this is his last chance to prove to the Mets that he's going to be a mainstay in this organization, and him doing so and proving that is going to come with his bat. The defense, I'm not really worried about. I don't really care where he's at on the field, whether it's third base, whether he gets reps at second base. The glove is secondary. What is he going to give you? And what is he going to show you this spring training from here all the way until the end of spring training to make his case for why he should be on this roster? And maybe even build up some of that trade value if the Mets are still leaning towards that come the deadline or next off season. But also on the other hand, do you go down that route and miss out on a super utility infielder in Luis Angel Acuna, a guy that probably is in line to be that backup second base option in the event that we just had in terms of the discussion of Jeff McNeil not producing in the first month and a half of the season, depending on how patient David Stearns and the Mets are with Jeff McNeil and his production at the plate. But the biggest question that I wanted to ask you, Rob, is that one of the subscribers on this channel actually is the co-host of the Sunny Days Media Mets podcast over there. Great stuff from those guys. My guy Zach proposed this on the post-game show yesterday that I did. Do you think that there's any world that the Mets would rely on Brett Beatty on a regular basis at second base in 2025?
Yes, because
Okay.
you're replacing a lefty with a lefty
Okay.
at that point. And here's the thing, guys. As much as everybody might like Luis Angel Acuna, everybody still likes power in Major League Baseball. Brett Beatty can potentially do that. Again,
Right.
that's the problem. Luis Angel Acuna is not a power guy. I don't think he ever will. I don't think he's going to be more than an 18 to 20 home run guy. I think that's the max. I think he's going to be a more of a speedster, more of a gap-to-gap hitter, which is fine. You always need those in the lineup. I think Acuna is going to be a fine player, but Brett Beatty has the potential. And by the way, Brett Beatty was a higher level prospect than Acuna at their both peaks. Brett Beatty was the better guy because he has power. He's big. He's long. He plays third base. One of the premium positions. That Brett Beatty was projected to be 25 plus home run guy. That was his projection. He was hit for average in the minors. Everything was supposed to be leading towards Brett Beatty being the next David Wright, so to speak. I know he's probably not going to be, but that's where he was projected to be. Luis Angel Acuna, there's no projections of him being a power hitter, right? He's not big enough to provide that type of power. I don't think he's going to do that. Again, we've seen, Ozzie Albies be a 20-plus home run guy, so it's possible. I'm not saying it's outside the question. He's got the name where I think more people are leaning towards the name and thinking he's going to be more like his brother power-wise, which isn't going to be close, by the way. And I don't like Brett Beatty. right? I said a couple of years ago when I was in spring training, when Brett Beatty was going from Double A to Triple A, they played a prospect game in spring training. Everybody knows Hayden from Talking Mets with Hayden. We were together. We were at that game where the prospects are playing. Brett Beatty was the star of the show. Like, he was hitting balls all over the place. He hit a home run in that game. He was lights out. He got a beautiful swing. So I naturally, as a left-handed batter, I kind of, gravitated towards him. But I'm not going to say he's a good player, because again, he's a quadruple A player at this point until it proves me wrong. Every time he goes back to triple A, he hits 450, has 5 home runs. He comes into major leagues, bats 210, and can't get the ball off the ground. So the reason why Beatty probably has a better chance than Acuna, it's not the ability defensively at all. I think Beatty has shown you he can play second base. Apparently, he's been very serviceable, if not above average, at second base when he transitioned there after he got sent down. He's actually been better at second base defensively than he has been at third base, which is interesting to think. But if he can be serviceable at second base and be, let's say, Jeff McNeil, and be that decently good at second base and not going to cause any problems with Lindor with the double play situation and all that, they love Brett Beatty's potential, power. That's what they're worried about. That's what they see. Because if you're going to have a super utility on the bench, what do you want from a guy who's probably going to pinch hit late in ball games, right? When Jesse Winker is up, and would they want Jesse Winker, who might be more of a strikeout guy, or they want Brett Beatty, who can take one deep? Because Beatty is projected to be a better power hitter than Jesse Winker, obviously. That's how they projected him. That's how they always projected him. It's when you're a super utility guy and you're going to get a lot of late at-bats, late in games, who do you want? You want Luisano Acuna, who, can probably hit a home run, but he's more of a gap-to-gap guy. He's more of a singles hitter at the moment. He can be turned into something different, but at the moment, there's still potential that I guess the Mets are seeing power-wise that I think intrigues them. And because of the fact that Brett Beatty has had the chances, I think it might be trying to get his value up a little bit in that case.
I think that's what it is. I think it's what
it definitely might be. But at the same time, are you going to hurt yourself on that latter part of the bench and possibly have him fail up in big spots in the season just to get his value up and lose games potentially because of him? I mean, it's not the end. It might not be 6, 7, 8 games, but it might be 1 or 2 that can make a difference. You know what I'm saying? So it might be getting his value up, absolutely, but I still think they love that power, the potential power there, where I don't think Acuna can provide that power that he's projected to have. Because you don't think Acuna is going to be a power guy, right? You think he's going to be more of a doubles machine, speedster type of guy? That's not a bad player, but
this is where I have a hard time assessing the ceiling of Acuna's power, because I mean, you take a look at what he provided in the small sample size of games. That's probably more power in that stretch of games and that small sample size than we've seen from Brett Beatty at the Major League Diamond in his
100%.
entire career so far, across like 160 ball games. So, and clearly what Acuna produced, in the Major League level, or at the Major League level, in crucial games, by the way. We're not talking about
Great.
like
100%.
some slap on the knee games. We're talking about crucial September games he appeared in. There's about 3 home runs in 14 games.
I agree.
So I think he has the power. I think he has the potential power to at least hit 15 plus, maybe upwards of 18. I don't think he's going to necessarily get up to 20 home runs across a season. Although if you multiply and do the simple math of 3 for 14 and what that would produce in 162, obviously I don't think that's sustainable, but it's above 20. I don't know. That's where I have a hard time judging his actual ceiling. But I think that what Acuna can provide power-wise is still on par with, maybe even a little bit more than what Brett Beatty has already shown us, so like solidly at the Major League level. But there's still something with Brett Beatty with the bat that I'm like, maybe he does figure it out. You know what I mean? And I hate to keep doing that because we've seen enough of Brett Beatty, or at least I have. And has he gotten the fairest of shakes? I would say yes, but others would argue no with some of the situations and the injuries or whatever. I don't know. I don't know how to assess this. I think that this is a very valid debate. I can see Brett Beatty, even though my preference would be Luis Angel Acuna for a multitude of reasons, because I do think Luis Angel Acuna is going to be good. And if he doesn't have that, home run power, who cares? I do think, like you said, he's going to have that gap to gap power. And the glove is plus plus. But I do think that the situation is dire for the Mets with Brett Beatty. And I've always said this, they're going to be stuck in between a rock and a hard place to try to figure out what's going to be his future with this organization, right? And if he doesn't prove to the Mets that he can be that mainstay in this organization, that means his trade value probably fell off too. So how do you get that back up? I don't know. At some point, if he continues down this path, you're just going to have to sell low on Brett Beatty. And it's just going to have to be what it is to clear that roster room and just move on and cut ties.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I don't want to get everybody crazy that I'm picking Beatty over Acuna. I'd rather have Acuna. Again, it was the conversation of, if you get Iglesias, do you still you get Iglesias and not have a chance of Acuna? Because again, if you get Jose Iglesias, Beatty and Acuna are in the minors, right? So I don't think that's happening. But again, if like Beatty is going to do what he does in spring training. He's going to have the numbers. So people that are overreacting to Brett Beatty and what he's doing right now doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. Right? Even when Vientos outplayed him last spring, Beatty was still having really good numbers, right? But Beatty already had the starting gig, so it was kind of not a question at that point. At this point, Beatty's going to do what he does in spring training. He's going to destroy minor league pitching. This is what he does, right? Acuna actually did it at the big league level, and he did it in crucial moments, like Chris said. So people are going to gravitate toward him 100%. And again, I'm okay with that. Again, I like the fact that Acuna's glove is very important to me when you're going to play third, second, or short at times. But again, I want to go back to Evan Roberts on WFAN with Chris Mendoza, with Carlos Mendoza, saying that they don't necessarily need a backup shortstop on this roster. Sure. So that tells me that they're very confident that Lindor's fun is going to play every day. They would rather have somebody that can play second and third more often. And that's where Beatty kind of lines up a little bit better. Because Acuna is not really a third baseman. He's a shortstop. He's a middle infielder, right? Not saying he can't do it, but the potential for Beatty to play, who's been playing very serviceable at second base and is a third baseman, they're not necessarily looking for a backup shortstop. And Mendoza said that in an interview.
Because what happens, and this is something that you did a fantastic job in, just terms of like spurring this thought in my mind. What happens if Marte does go down? What happens?
Yeah.
Vientos can DH if you need him to.
Bingo.
Right? Be that right-handed DH, and then Beatty can play third base. I know that's not what everyone would want because they still want Vientos at third base, but that's probably what the Mets are thinking.
When Mendoza and Stearns talks about roster flexibility, Beatty provides that roster flexibility more than Luis Angel Acuna. It sounds weird, but if you what Chris just said, when you think about it, it makes a ton of sense. And that's what they're talking about. They love roster flexibility, and Beatty provides that. Beatty can slide over to third base. Vientos can go to first or DH. In worst case scenarios, Acuna is a middle infielder. And not saying Acuna can't. That's the idea here. And your super utility guy needs to play most infield positions, right? And they even said that Brady can actually get a emergency start at shortstop, worst case scenario, right? They don't know if Acuna can play third base. Like that Mendoza said that in the interview as well. So again, it's just versatility here. It's just roster flexibility. Brett Beatty provides that, even though it doesn't excite a lot of people. It's just how they look at it. And, when you're the 26th man on the roster, basically, and last man on the bench, that's what they're looking for, roster flexibility in a scenario.
And that's Right, correct. And also the fact that the age here kind of matters, to be honest with you, right? I mean, Brett Beatty's approaching 25 years old. This is his end all be all. Acuna is still only 22 years old. He's still going to be in this organization if there's no trade with another team for a frontline starter that we've been talking about potentially with, Acuna being in. Um, he's got more time to figure it out and have his place be solidified in this organization than Brett Beatty does.
Mhm.
So it's not a knock on Acuna,
No.
right? It's not a knock on him at all. It's more so this is the last ditch effort
Yep.
for Brett Beatty and the Mets to get him, to showcase something while also being able to play a corner infield spot. I think that's the most important thing here too when you talk about the glove differentials here. And people forget, right? I mean, if Lindor goes down, let's just say, in the worst case scenario, that'd be a pretty terrible situation, right? I mean,
Right.
we want to see him play 162 if we can help it. But if something happens there, like it did last season in September, and Lindor's going to miss some games, I mean, Acuna's a short call away. Acuna's a
Well,
short call away.
and I'm glad you brought that up because again, Mendoza also in an interview said that in an emergency situation, just for one day, they can throw Brett Beatty there. But if it's a 1, 2, 3 week injury for Lindor, they would switch Beatty Acuna with Beatty. I mean Beatty with Acuna. They already
Right.
said because Acuna can play every day at shortstop. So again, this is the situation where they see Acuna as more of a long term injury scenario where Acuna can play every day. This is where I think they believe that Acuna needs the at bats and why he might end up in AAA more than Brett Beatty. They think Brett Beatty can handle the super utility role more than Luis Angel Acuna. I don't know why they believe that. And I still think they want more at bats for Luis Angel Acuna. I still think they can get more out of him, get him more at bats at the minor league level. So when they really do need him, they can just throw him in and be ready to go. I think the fact that, like you said, Chris, he's 25 years old now. They got to figure out Brett Beatty at this point. If you can't trade him yet, you got to figure him out at this point because you can't just have him in limbo and make him lose value and not help this team. At some point, you got to figure him out, and this is the best way at the time, at the moment, to figure him out.
Essentially, Acuna is losing out on a roster spot at this point because of Brett Beatty's failures. I mean, you can look at it that way
Hundred
too.
percent, hundred
You can
percent. And
look at
what
it
the
that way.
Mets need is
Yeah.
what Beatty could provide. That's the unfortunate
Right.
part.
Could. Right. Correct. 100%. And I see where you're going with that too. I think that's pretty accurate. All right, guys. This was a pretty eventful post game. I mean, I enjoyed this discussion a lot. I think it was very necessary in
Yeah.
order to go over everything in terms of doing our due diligence of what the latest is, not only with the spring training game, but also getting into the nitty gritty of this roster and how things could potentially play out now that we are once the calendar turns to tomorrow, we're a month away officially until opening day, right? So we appreciate you all tuning in. Please do smash the thumbs up buttons if you enjoyed these discussions. If you don't agree with us, that's okay. We value and enjoy your opinions as well. We all think about this team differently. And with the way this team is structured right now, especially with the pitching, there's going to be differences in opinions, and that's okay. But please do hit those thumbs up buttons if you rock with the channel, if you've been rocking with us before, or if you're new, right? Hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Final thoughts here on this post game show, the Mets post game show on both of our channels before we see you all on the next stream. Rob, final thoughts here.
Yeah, don't get overhyped for what you see at AAA, right? I think some people might be getting overhyped with Brett Beatty. Some might be getting overhyped with maybe a pitcher or two you might see that might surprise you a lot. Don't get overly excited because they're facing major minor league hitters, they're facing minor league pitching. We know that can, if you need that roster spot, you're going to see the team worry about that more. Fans, don't overreact to minor league stats and spring training stats because it can totally turn you in a different direction than you might believe. And that's all I got to say. Just, enjoy baseball. Hopefully it gets warmer in the Northeast. I know it's been kind of cold. Well, not as cold as it was, but just enjoy baseball and just hope everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with that. And also, my final thoughts are clearly let's go Mets. But as I said yesterday in the post game, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. I promise, right? Because when we're taking a look at this pitching, I know that pitching is the primary focus here, but this lineup is still giving everybody something to be
Yep.
excited about. And I said it right. If the Mets don't go external, they stay internal. The bullpen, at least, this is not the ideal situation, but the bullpen at least is good enough to mitigate some of the unfortunate injuries that the Mets have been dealing with in the rotation. So it's kind of like a little bit of a delayed process, a little bit of a setback, a little bit of adversity, but it's nothing to, at this point, knowing the type of offseason the Mets had, especially with the offense, I don't think that this is anything to turn anybody's excitement away from the upcoming season. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you all being here on this Mets post-game show with Rob and myself. As always, let's go Mets. Stay tuned to the next post-game show during spring training. I can't wait until we do the real thing here in terms of the actual background, the official
Oh
background,
yeah. Oh
come
yeah.
opening day, come the beginning of the season, and keep rocking with us. We definitely appreciate it. Thank you for the support. Thank you for dropping your thoughts and opinions in the live chat. Again, we read everybody's comments and we want to hear your thoughts. We value that. So until next time, guys, this is the Mets post game show. Let's go Mets. See you all next time.
Good night,
Peace.
guys. Let's go Mets.